Thank you so much, panelists, for all those insights, experiences, your views, and knowledge about this. Well, I can truly say this was really an interesting session indeed for all of us. The way all the three panelists discussed the pros and cons of the cybersecurity. Well, thank you so much. I'm sure everybody is going to make some pointers out of it. And now we move on to the next segment, ladies and gentlemen. So please help me in welcoming Mr. Rajendra S Pawar, Chairman DSCI, to address all the gathering present here with us virtually at the FinSec 2022. Over to you, sir.
Thank you so much, Navita. And let me join all my colleagues at DSI in welcoming you, all of you. You got enough statistics of how many people are attending and so on, but I'm delighted that we have almost 1,700 people who registered, and of which about 800 are unique individuals who've been active, and at any time 600 to 700 people are attending. So I think this session, which is the fourth in our series, started in 2018, I think is gaining momentum. And from what I get a sense right now, we'll get the data as we go forward, that about 80% are from the financial sector, and there are 20% who come from the IT industry and suppliers, and a few people who are interested. So good profile, good participation, and I think the session is also quite rich. And I'm going to just pick one topic for my thoughts. And I do want to get the session back on time, so I will try and close at 11:30, which is when my session was meant to close. And the topic that I want to talk about is basically, how do all of you, and along with DSCI, how do all of us make security and privacy, I'll underline privacy as well, I'll talk a bit on that. How do we make it not just an important board agenda or an agenda for the board meeting? How do we do a deeper engagement? How do we get a deeper engagement of the board on matters pertaining to security and privacy? That's really where I want to give some thought, because all of you who are listening have a role to play in making that happen. So we do know that the digital inclusion, digital India, startups, financial inclusion, all of these are drivers to get everybody to be concerned about making sure that your information and privacy and money is safe. So that doesn't need explanation. And in certain sectors, which are critical sectors, and also the financial sector where everybody's money is involved, the regulators have woken up to the issue, RBI and then SEBI, and are giving mandates to some sectors and some segments to take this matter seriously. And so the prescriptions that are coming from the regulators are piecemeal. They will normally say, okay, if you're above this size and you're in this sector, you should hire a CISO. It's a very significant step because a role is defined. And once a person is carrying a role, he'll have to flap around and do things and make sure that everybody understands that I'm important to my job. So that's one action which has happened in a kind of a mandated sense. The other thing I think which is triggering action is when an episode happens or an incident happens. Now, in spite of DSCI saying again and again, and the government saying again and again that if something happens, please report it immediately, there's a natural tendency, I think, and this is a tendency everywhere, human tendency, not to talk about it too much, because it gets seen as a weakness, it's seen as a damage to the brand, it's seen as, oh, what did we not take care of? So this issue, I think, is part of the issue that all of you have to educate your organizations on, that it's healthy to communicate. How you communicate, whom do you communicate is separate, but it's wise to communicate quickly rather than wait, because otherwise the damage internally to the organization can be large. We don't wake up to it. But more than that, people who are trying to cause those damages get the time window to do it in other places. So incidents are happening, they're not reported, but that's a second trigger for causing change in organization. And that is mostly around security. And I'll touch on privacy, which to me is going to be a bigger driver of corporate action than even security. And I'll come to that in a minute. So the coming of the CISOs, and many of you are CISOs, and some of you are CIOs, which is a very healthy sign, and very few CXOs other than CISOs, and I'll touch on that a little bit more. And so, in a sense, that's the situation today. The thoughts I want to leave with you are some thoughts which should be action for each and every one of you on how do you initiate actions in your organization or conversations in your organization, which will help us to lift the capability of every organization, A, to cope, to prepare so that cyber incidents don't happen. That's a prevention part, that's the insurance part. And B, that if it happens, we act responsibly and quickly and very rapidly. So that's your role. So how do we go about it? And I had just some thoughts. So first of all, to me, there is a lateral process of diffusion of information that you're doing already, and you should drive. And what is that? That basically is that all the peers, all the CXOs, all the heads of various functions should become far more sensitive to both the downsides of cyber security and the sensitivity on privacy. So each organization has its own method of planning and review. And I don't know how many of you are now being pulled into senior and more senior level discussions. Chances are, if the CEO or the chairman of the company has got educated or has become aware of someone whom he knows who suffered, even if your organization hasn't been attacked, they will want to bring it to the knowledge. So there is a bit of a top-down happening, but that is sporadic, that is by chance, and that is not a planned process. So what you can cause to happen is perhaps at the CXO level, which is your peers, to really one-on-one seek them out and discuss with them on how you are building a plan, but how your plan is only going to be dependent on what their needs are, and sensitize them. Because they're also getting sensitized when something happens, either in the work structure situation or the social structure. So proactively working on each and every one of the department or function heads and telling them that we want to just understand and we want to explain, and educating them on the cyber security part, which is easy because that's a threat issue. Everybody gets, fear works for everybody. We don't want to overdo it, but we have to define the risks. And quite clearly, each of you as a CISO in the company have spent your time trying to comprehend, to understand that given the organization you come into or you're in, what are the risks? Because the risks are different. They play out very differently in different organizations. So how do you get them to become sensitive? So that is the horizontal axis, and I think the deeper engagement, the more frequent engagement you do to educate users at your level on the security part, more important. Now on privacy, I think privacy is a different dimension. So here I think the education for all peers and functional managers and marketing heads and product chiefs and so on is that your product deals with people, serves people, and their privacy is the risk that you have, a violation of their privacy. Now this angle is not understood enough. So I think you will have to visualize that in your organization, what are the kind of privacy compromises that can happen when your company, salespeople or business people offer their value propositions, or more, when they design the proposition, that you're designing a service from your institution. What are the privacy risks inherent in that? What are the threats of privacy? Those are not being comprehended well. So that's an important discussion, because that goes and alters the product offering of the institution that you work at. And more difficult because it's not like something will collapse like a cyber incident will do, but your role is that. Second, I think is you have to find ways, and here I keep telling our DSCI team that the education we have to do at the board level perhaps should be mandated by SEBI or such organizations or RBI and so on, because RBI has said that the board has to take a judgment on crisis management system. And if it's a CEO or a chairman who's sensitive, he will make it happen. The others will delegate. They will often delegate to a risk committee, or they will delegate it to the audit committee chair. So I think we have to systematically work on audit committee chairs, because risk also is part of their role in many organizations, but somewhere it's becoming a bigger role. So how do we directly or indirectly, and for all of you, DSCI is a platform. If you tell us you want the marketing people to be sensitized because they are not taking care of privacy, then DSCI could put together a program of sensitizing marketing people to privacy issues when you design a product specification. And similarly, of course, we are now thinking of how do we reach the boards? How do we reach the chairman of boards? How do we tell them about the twin problems of security and privacy? And therefore, how do we get more and more organizations to get CISOs? How do we get more and more mandating that all CXOs in their business plans have to put in a chapter on security and privacy, and then they will have to lean on you to do that. And also on whether audit committee, and this is something which we have to see how do we bring it in. We don't want to push regulators too much because this starts creating difficulty for operations of companies. But still, we do want that the audit committee and the risk committee should have a more formal chapter in their minutes or agenda making and so on and so forth. So the task for all of you, therefore, and I want to finish with that, is to recognize that the bigger change will happen when we have a top-down effect. But equally, you will have to do a horizontal axis of educating all product marketing people, sales people, operations people, that there's a risk on cybersecurity, but there's a bigger risk to the purpose of the organization if you don't take care of privacy. So I will, for the moment, just leave it there. And of course, if you people have ideas, questions, suggestions, anxieties that in my organization they don't take care of it seriously, please do feed it into the DSCI system. All of you are connected to the DSCI system. That's a good thing. We have a very good CISO Connect. Feed it in the DSCI system so we can build then propositions and events and white papers and fireside chats for chairman, and thinking of that as the 1 hour fireside chat for chairman of companies to sensitize them to what they need to do. They just can't delegate and say, we have a CISO, we are okay. It's not enough. So with that, I want to end, and I look forward to getting a lot of comments from all of you. Maybe not as much in the chat box, but more seriously with your DSCI contact to say, here's what we think should be done to make your job more effective, to make your impact more powerful, because really speaking, that's what this session is all about. So thanks so very much, and back to you, Navyata. Thank you so much.